Thank you everyone for giving me the chance to say something about my recent research. Today the topic of my presentation is challenges in quantitative analysis of Lakhra coal by means of calibration of reliefs. And this work is done under the supervision of Professor Dr. Aslam Beg and Dr. Zahiruddin. Contents of my today's presentations are distinguished features of calibration of reliefs by coal, issues when dealing with coal, which is a multi-element sample, self-absorption problem, IRSAC, internal reference line self-absorption correction method, density correction method, and results. Calibration of reliefs is a simple and quick analytical technique. No need of sample preparation. Sample can be any kind in any phase. Non-destructive. It has a fine detection capability and does not require any reference sample of same matrix. Yesterday, Dr. Nisar already explained thoroughly about the setup of the laser-induced breakdown spectroscopy, so I'm not going to repeat it again. So it is the same setup, and now I'm going for the coal. Why I choose coal? According to the World Coal Association, 40% of the global need of electricity is fueled by coal-fueled power plant, and it is also used in steel production, alumina refiners, paper manufacturers, and the chemical and pharmaceutical industries. That's why I use coal. This is just an illustration how a coal-fueled power plant looks like. Pakistan has also developed so many coal-fueled power plants. Why we have to characterize the coal? Because in a coal-fueled power plant, the lifetime of the plant actually depends upon its characterization, because all the inorganic content inside the coal will be deposited on the wall and can decrease its lifetime. And also, if we have to estimate the total energy which can be produced by the coal sample, we must have to find out the total carbon content inside the sample. And to also find the environmental hazard impact of our coal fuel power plant, we have to find out the sulfur and other harmful toxic content. Now the issues. The problem with the coal, it has a multi-element, so it has so many emission lines. Like you see here, it is actually the SARS-20, which is a coal sample from South Africa, and you can see that it has a silicon, aluminium, iron, titanium, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, phosphorus, sulfur, barium, beryllium, and see copper, stone, and so many. Now coal is just not the multi-element sample. One element like carbon, it has a content of almost more than 80% of the total, which makes all other elements nearly trace in comparison with C. Another very important problem, it has a molecular bands like carbon, anion, CN, violets, C2 swan bands. These molecular bands actually cover a large area in the emission spectrum. Why it has a problem? Because of the presence of the C and violet band and C2 swan band. Sometimes they cover a very important area, like here 383 to 388 nanometer. There is a weak magnesium one line 3 to 3.829 nanometer, and we cannot use it because it is actually mixed with this band. And now there is a problem to accurately measure the magnesium content. Now the problem which I really like to address today is the self-absorption problem. And why it happens? Because when the laser strikes the target, the plasma plume will emerge from the target, and the inner plasma is very hot, then outer plasma becomes cold, and this cold plasma can reabsorb the emission from the inner hot plasma. Normally the resonance lines and strong lines are affected by the self-absorption. They have the higher transition probability, so the chances of reabsorption by the cold plasma is higher, even for the trace elements in minor amount of elements in a sample. Self-absorption can occur and clearly affect the line intensity of the emission lines. Now, what actually a self-absorption can do with your emission line? So you can see here that the actual intensity of the line, it has to be greater, and the full width half maximum have to be thinner. So it actually broadens your line and also decrease the line intensity. Problem of the self-absorption becomes more acute when you are dealing with coal. And why it is it? I will tell you. In coal, the total carbon content is almost more than 80%, which will result the contribution of other elements very weak in comparison with carbon. Due to this reason, the only resonance and strong lines are visible in the emission spectrum, and these lines were having a very good chances to be the victim of the self-absorption. The method I used to decrease the problems of self-absorption are IRSAC, internal reference line self-absorption correction method, and the number density correction method. This is the emission spectrum of the Lakhra coal, and you can see that how many lines are there and how many elements are there. Now, what is the theory behind the internal reference line self-absorption correction method? Is that we have introduced a self-absorption coefficient here, which is shown here, F lambda. This coefficient is 0 when the line is completely self-absorbed, means no lines, no intensity, and it has a value of 1 when there is no self-absorption. So we have to find out that the reference line which has a very low transition probability, which means weak lines, and by using these lines we can find the self-absorption coefficient for other lines. Now here you can see the Boltzman plot when I use the IRSAC method, and you have found that it's a very clear straight line, and we have found the temperature which is 9500 Kelvin. Now here I use this fixed slope method, so the temperature which I have found out by using the calcium lines, I can use the same temperature for other lines as well, because they are also the part of the same sample and same plasma. For number density, we have used the hydrogen alpha line because it has a very low chance of self-absorption, and we have found that the number density is 3.07 10 to the power 17. Okay, here the composition of all the neutral species were calculated using the intercept of the neutral lines with fixed slope of the calcium, and the composition of the ionic species were calculated by using the Boltzman equation. Now there is the density correction method. We use H-alpha line for the estimation of accurate value of the electron number density. The electron number density estimated using H-alpha line or any other emission line and the laser produced plasma should be same, because it is the same sample. Now these are the steps for using the density correction method. The self-absorption coefficient is actually the ratio of the two of the same line, one which is totally unaffected by the self-absorb actual intensity, and one which is actually affected by the self-absorption coefficient. Now we have replaced it by using the full width half maximum of the same line, and then we replace it by the number density, the actual number density which we have calculated from the H-alpha line, and the number density which is calculated by the line which is actually affected by the self-absorption coefficient. Now when we have found the the actual intensity of all the lines by using the same density correction method. So we use these actual intensities to find out the actual contribution of each element in the sample. So here are the results. The first column is actually the verified content, which is given by the Lakhra Coal Development Company, and we have compared it with our methods. The second column is actually when we did not use any kind of self-absorption correction method, and then the third one is the self-absorption correction by using the IRSAC, and the last one is the self-absorption correction by using the density correction method. Now we have concluded that the composition of the detected elements calculated by using the calibration free LIBS technique with self-absorption correction and number density correction are in good agreement with the certified values provided by the Lakhra Coal Development Company. So it actually increased the efficiency of the method. Now other than supervisor is always there, but other than supervisor, there is a team which actually helped me a lot when I'm working on the same project. So I like to thank all the members like Dr. Rizwan Ahmed, Dr. Nasar Ahmed, Dr. Zeeshan Adil Umar, Dr. Mahmood, Dr. Jabbar, and Mr. Amir Wakas. Thank you a lot. Okay, now everything is done. So if there are any question, I can answer them.